Southampton Town Board to order on this 4th day of May 2023. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara. Here. Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Skibon.
Present.
It's never unanimous.
On Jay's last day,
Mr. Consistent.
or last meeting in office, we'll all say the same thing.
We'll see.
Present.
Yes.
We'll say existing.
Okay, so,
It says present
It
on
does
So
the
here's-
sheet, so
we're, at least we're all here or present, and
we're presently here.
we're going to review the draft agenda so we could get that published. And then, if we have time, we'll do some quick updates. And then we're, though it has it as part of the work session, the Regional Water Quality Summit, it didn't necessarily have to be part of the work session, so we could sort of recess, and we don't have to sit up here. And we'll sort that out, and that should go for a good hour, hour and a half. And then we do have executive session to follow, so. All right, so this is the agenda for the May 9th meeting, which is next Tuesday. It's going to be 1 o'clock here and hybrid. And we have a lot of public hearings. So there's 12 of them, and I do want to change the order here as well. So, but I'll get to that in a second. So the first one, though, is public hearing for supplemental funding for WQIP of Round Pond Stormwater and Restoration WQIP project. I should say of Round Pond, but I guess that's fine. All right, number 2 is public hearing on the acquisition of land of Five Towns College located at 4 Enterprise Zone Drive, Riverside, for water quality improvement purposes. The third one is to have a public hearing to accept a deed of residual fee from Blair K. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea pursuant to Southampton Town Code, and that's section 244-4 and 247, section 247 of General Municipal Law of the State of New York. All right, so the next one, the one that's listed as number 12, I want to move to number 4. It's a public hearing to consider a change of zone from R80 to agricultural conservation and to consider acceptance of an agricultural conservation district easement for property located at 50 Jobs Lane, Bridgehampton, with corresponding amendment to the zoning map. All right.
So you want to switch
that
4
will
and 12?
That becomes 4.
Okay.
All right?
Well, we're not switching 4 and 12, we're just inserting,
Oh,
Yeah.
just inserting 12 into number
Into
4, and the
4,
rest will
okay.
drop down.
So now 4 then becomes number 5, which is public hearing to consider authorizing the Triton Lane East Quad
Can we,
Beach.
I think there was a request also, can we move 11 up? Is that possible to, can we change that one?
Is that Kathleen also involved with that one? Okay, so let's make,
Katie, actually, but.
oh, Katie asked for that?
She has an issue, this possible issue this evening, too, so.
Okay, so let's make number 11, number 5. And that'll be a public hearing to consider amending Town Code Section 330-77 to increase the permitted rear yard lot coverage percentage. Okay, then we go to the one that's shown as 4, that'll be 6. A public hearing to consider authorizing the Triton Lane East Quad Beach Parking Pilot Program. Number 7 will be the public hearing to consider amending Town Code Chapter 270-9 to add a requirement to publish rental registration number. Number 8, which was 6, the public hearing to consider a local law amending Chapter 244, transfer of development rights certificate program to acknowledge the inclusion of sanitary flow credits. The next one, number 9, which was 7, public hearing to consider a local law amending Chapter 330-7, acknowledging transfer of sanitary flow credits. Number 10, which was 8, public hearing to consider a local law amending Chapter 330-9, density incentive provisions to acknowledge the inclusion of sanitary flow credits. Number 11, which was 9, public hearing to amend Town Code Chapter 316, vehicles junked and abandoned in order to enhance enforcement ability. Number 12, which had been number 10, is public hearing to amend Town Code Chapter 283, special events in order to enhance enforcement ability, clarify definitions, and restructure application procedures.
And so 11 is now number 5, and 12 was number 4, right?
Yes.
11 is now number 5, number 12 is number 4.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's get to everybody got that? Yep. Pretty straightforward.
Thank you for making those changes.
No problem. A lot of hearings, but shouldn't be too bad. I think the Triton Lane one might be quite a few people. We'll
Dinner
see.
will be served.
What?
Dinner will be served.
All right, so then we're up to resolutions. The first one is 634 is, we have an issue with this one. I'm going to withdraw it, right, John?
I think,
Which one?
it's the appointment for ARB.
Yeah.
We're working on something right now, but I think you have to withdraw this
Yeah.
for the time being.
All right, but I can't withdraw it here
No, you
because
have
it's
to
been
withdraw it on
tabled,
the
so we'll
floor.
withdraw it on the floor. But
this
it is
time he's,
appointing a member to the ARB.
Yeah, there's a technical issue that we may have it solved, I don't know yet.
Okay. And then Councilman Schiavone, you got the next one there.
43122, you would adopt town one-year agricultural use agreements, 2023, 2024.
Town Board Resolution ID 43287, authorize reallocation of W-Cook funding from Flying Point Comfort Station to Hot Dog Beach Comfort Station.
ID number 43197, authorize supervisor to sign contract extensions for the subaqueous water main crossing, Shinnecock Canal at Mashut Beach, and Ponquag Bridge at Lighthouse Road with Banker Construction Corp. and G&M Earth Moving.
Town Board Resolution ID 43281, authorize supplemental funding for W-Clip of Round Pond Stormwater and Restoration W-Clip project.
43280, authorize the purchase of construction services for Renew Contracting and Restoration Services using the Bay Shore UFSD contract for construction services at 240 West Montauk Highway, Hampton Bays. 43133, authorize the supervisor to enter into agreement with A. Martin Petrovich, professor of horticulture, to review the 2023 groundwater monitoring reports of the Subonic Golf Course. 43132, authorize the supervisor to enter into agreement with A. Martin Petrovich, professor of horticulture, to review the 23 groundwater monitoring reports, annual superintendent's report, and management of the Bridge Golf Course. 43264, authorize the supervisor to execute a 2023 K service and maintenance. K is a typo. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what
Yeah,
that was.
that's a long
I
way
was going to
there.
ask about that. Let's get rid of the K. Service and maintenance agreement with Best Climate Control for maintenance and service on the air condition and/or heating equipment at Southampton Town Police Department. Is it air conditioning? Doesn't matter? Doesn't matter. All right, 43223, authorize the supervisor to execute a computer use agreement with Edward Wolfersdorf in furtherance of professional services consulting contract.
Resolution ID 43237, authorize the supervisor to execute a lease agreement with Quadient for IX5AF mail machine system for Justice Court.
43191, authorize the supervisor to execute a sole source agreement with CI Technologies, Inc. for IA Pro with Blue Team Software for Town Police Department. 43279, authorizing the supervisor to execute an agreement for the replacement of 3 RTU HVAC units at the Southampton Town Justice Court with Premier Mechanical Services, Inc., using a Suffolk County contract. 43278, authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with High Tech Air Conditioning Services, Inc. for HVAC repairs to the lower level auditorium and first floor auditorium of Town Hall.
Town Board Resolution ID 43259, authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents pertaining to the 2023 transportation contract with Suffolk County Office for the Aging.
Resolution ID 43277, authorize the supervisor to execute parks and recreation agreements for programs.
43199, authorize the supervisor to sign any and all documents with Moncito Inc. for website services. 43258, authorizes the supervisor to sign consultant agreement with Michael J. Zarro to assist the town police department with the Hexagon computer-aided dispatch software, niche records management software, and vigilant license plate reader camera project.
Resolution ID 43284, authorize the supervisor to sign a one-year extension with LMJ Enterprises LLC DBA, the Sandcastle Cafe, for a Tiana Beach concession for the 2023 summer season.
Town Board Resolution ID 43275, to authorize supervisor to sign the 2023 Sag Harbor Partnership Incorporated Cultural Arts and Recreation Grant.
Resolution ID 43185, award and authorize supervisor to sign contract for a used hydraulic excavator with All Island Equipment Corp.
ID 43261, award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract for a 2022 Ford F600 dump truck with GenGas Ford. Town Board Resolution ID 43249, declare items surplus and authorize disposal of vehicles.
43296, recall and amend resolution number 2023-472, authorizing the supervisor to sign an extended contract with Messiano Consulting, Inc. for grant writing assistance. Rick, you're up. Top of
Oh, there
page
we go,
31.
31, one more. 43225, recall and amend resolution number 2023-581, authorizing the supervisor to execute a contract with DTN LLC for Weather Century Online Public Safety Program.
43233, recall and rescind Town Board Resolution 2023-104.
Town Board Resolution ID 43198, resolution authorizing supervisor to sign contract with Ryan D'Amico for sound system at Good Ground. Resolution ID 43285, resolution authorizing the Parks Director to enter into an interim agreement for mobile concessions pursuant to Town Code Chapter 111-7B2 for 2023 season at Mecox Beach and W. Scott Cameron Beach and Red Creek Park. Town Board Resolution ID 43292, the 2023 notice to bidders for the 2022 Ford F-250 Super Duty with Nap Heyday service body 696 ML for highway.
43184, accepts donation for Southampton Town Police Department. Oh, well, that's very nice. There's a $500 and a $10,000 donation. 43229, amends 2023 adopted budget for Building and Zoning Division overtime. 43232, amends the 23 adopted budget for Highway Special Events. 43228, amends the 23 adopted budget for special events as well. Let me just make sure they're not duplicates. No, they're completely different. All right, 43234, amends the 23 adopted budget for the Controller's Office. 43235, amends the 23 through 27 capital budget and adds capital project West Hampton Transfer Station improvements. 43230, amends the 23 to 27 capital budget for town facilities improvements. 43263, authorizes expenditure from town police restricted account. 43203, deposits monies for professional services in connection with the Bridge Golf Course groundwater monitoring review. 43226, deposit monies in escrow account for professional services in connection with the Lewis Road PRD site plan application. 43294, appoint Susan Cohen, Vice Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Resolution
I'd like
ID
to co-sponsor that.
43130, resolution of adoption of amendment of Town Code Chapter 312, Vehicles and Traffic, Parking Prohibited, Windermere Court.
Yeah, so just on 43294, I think Councilman Scavone wanted to be a co-sponsor on that, am I correct? And,
I'm sorry,
believe
which one are
so.
you talking about?
Yeah, it's not, there's no additional pay there, it's
43294.
just so it's clear when the
Zoning board.
chair
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
able to run the meetings.
I got it.
That who will be chairing the meetings. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, where are we? We're at
Town.
They're 45.
43265, is that you?
Yep.
Okay.
43265, resolution of adoption amending chapter 330 through 340, 330-340 through 330-346, dark sky laws for enhanced enforcement.
All right, I
What
think
page
we're
is
on
that?
page 54.
54.
43267, resolution of adoption amending Town Code Chapter 270-9 to add requirement to publish rental registration number.
Town Board Resolution 43268, co-sponsored with Councilman Martell, a resolution of adoption amending Town Code Chapter 283, special events.
What page are we on now?
Page 74.
Town Board Resolution ID 43239, cost reimbursement waiver for East Quogue Village Green Summer Concert Series to be held Thursday nights from June 27th to August 1st, 2023, excluding July 4th, with rain dates of August 8th and 15th, 2023.
Could I be added to that, Cindy?
Sure.
Okay, 43244, release of performance bond and acceptance of maintenance bond in connection with Mill Creek Heights, also known as Sag Harbor Woods. 42991, accepts resignation of a building permits examiner and land management. 43175, accepts retirement of Brian DeLuca, Southampton Town Police Officer. 42996, accepts retirement of Vivian Miles, minibus driver in Senior Services Transportation. 43269, appoints Brandon Kelly to Senior Park Attendant from Civil Service List. 43272, appoints Brendan Morris to Office Assistant from Civil Service List.
Can I co-sponsor that one?
Yes.
43271, appoints Catherine Antos to Animal Control Officer 2 from Civil Service List. 42864, appoints Peter Rivas to Animal Control Officer 1 position in Public Safety. 43270, appoints Ruth Simon to Case Manager from Civil Service List. 43282, appoints Jonathan Migliori to Sanitation Helper position in Municipal Works Waste Management Division.
ID 43288, notice of public hearing for supplemental funding for WQIP of the Alewife Creek Stormwater Restoration Project.
Could I be added to that as well, Cindy?
Town Board Resolution 43174, co-sponsored with Councilman Martell, notice of public hearing to consider amending Section 6.5, penalties for offensive of Southampton Town Code 164, fire prevention, in order to increase penalties and add mandatory surcharge.
43289, notice of public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2023 CPF pilot plan. So hold on one second. So this would be a public hearing on May 23rd, 2023. And this is sort of a big deal because we are expanding the areas, the school districts and ambulance and fire districts that can get paid for properties taken off the tax rolls for preservation. And under this plan, there are several areas, including Tuckahoe, I think West Hampton and Remsenburg, that now will get pilot program payments. So it is a big deal to those school districts. The ones that already get it will continue to get it. But the formula that was derived, which has a basis in hardship, we worked pretty closely to develop this formula with the tax receiver and the tax sole assessor and with others, the IT department. This is based on Assemblyman Beal's work up in Albany, changing the pilot program, which originally was just the sort of Pine Barrens areas and then it was changed to some lower census tract areas. Now it's sort of based on the tax rate within that area on a, per thousand basis. And we'll explain it all, but it is a big deal, that resolution, and I don't know that there's been much attention given to it, but it will have a big tax impact for a few of those areas. So 43297 is notice of public hearing to consider the acquisition of lands of Shorts Pond Associates, Marcia Held, Jane Held, and Linda Held, located at 264 Geyer Road and 1160 Scuttle Hole Road in the hamlet of Bridgehampton, New York. Um, 43286, authorized acquisition of land of Five Towns College located at 4 Enterprise Zone Drive, Riverside, for water quality improvement purposes.
Resolution ID 42809, accept the deed of residual fees from Blair St. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea, Suffolk County tax map as indicated in the resolution pursuant to Southampton Town Code Chapter 244-4, obtaining a development right certificate, and Chapter 247, General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
42888, acquisition of lands of Peconic Bay Development LLC, and amend CPF management and stewardship plan to include those properties. 43151, acquisition of lands of Joe Rappaport located at 427 Little Noyak Path, Watermill, and amend CPF stewardship plan to include that property. There are some more. There's a few other add-ons. 43298, authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Hayduck Engineering LLC for professional engineering services in connection with the preparation of a feasibility study to service the business district of Hampton Bays.
I'd like to add it to that.
The one thing on this is, I think we need to think beyond the business district. If we're gonna do a Hampton Bays sewer, it ought to be able to handle other areas, particularly, areas closer to the water there. There's a big population. I know that we're trying to get everybody IA systems, but it may be less costly to get people hooked up to sewers. So I just, Janice, can you respond to that? Because
Good morning, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. Yes, I can respond to that. We would like to do that. The district initially was just that little Hampton Bays DOD. Now we're asking them to expand it to go all the way down 20 by 20, where past the diner, to sort of the end of that district, and to the other side to encompass King Cullen. So it's a much bigger area. And then when we find a suitable parcel, we'll be able to say, okay, who can connect in? So initially it will be for that downtown area, but we would hope to plan it for future expansion so that we can capture those neighborhoods to the south that are impacting Tiana Bay and,
Yes.
Western Shinnecock Bay. So yes, that would be the ultimate goal. But obviously this would be a very long-range plan.
Right, well, if we're building the infrastructure for
We would build the infrastructure and we would-
downtown, it's nice if you have a property that can scale up.
100%, and so we'll have to find a suitable parcel. The one by the cemetery initially was looked at because it was just for a very small area, even though people think that was a large area, it really wasn't. When you're talking sewer districts, that was a very, very small area. Here, we would look to find a parcel through this process that could accommodate a larger business district area and then future expansion.
Okay, excellent.
And that's the key.
And that's the key. And to do that all through groundwater modeling and using H2M to help us
All
do
right,
that.
thank you for that.
Sandy, if I could be a co-sponsor also, please.
Me as well.
All right, 43300 appoints Edward Leon to driver messenger position in senior services transportation. 43302 appoints Stephen Gregory to maintenance mechanic 2 position in water district. Rick Martell's resolution is next, 43303, notice public hearing to enforce action at 1 Squire Pond Road, Hampton Bays, for unsanitary condition water supply. 43304, notice public hearing to amend Chapter 247, open space, to allow for clustering of commercially zoned property proposed for subdivision. Okay, and that's all I got. All right, everybody okay with publishing the agenda as discussed? All right, Sunday, you are good to go.
Thank
We are right at 11 o'clock. So it's perfect. We're not going to do any updates at the moment. Jim, do I do this as a recess of the work session until 12:30, or are we going to take this meeting and incorporate it
As
within
a
our
work
work
session?
session?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I think it can.
Okay, do we
Keep it as
need
a-
to sit here then for this?
Oh. Isn't that
Yeah,
what,
right.
oh, we weren't doing that? Oh, they would,
Yeah, well, we're going to have
Bringing
Mr.
in
Scully
three
come
people.
in.
And Fred, and Fred H.
Oh,
Preserve
then I
said he was
pres-
gonna do this, but,
Does it make sense
Are they
to
sit-
have
are
us
they
stay
sitting
here
here?
yeah, I would do that.
and have them present?
And have them, where do they
Okay.
present from, though?
All right,
Dais
so,
and
so
the-
then our next item is this Regional Water Quality Summit, and we're gonna bring some folks in who are here. We've also opened up the attendance and to local officials from other towns, anybody affected by this. So we have quite a number of people, I think, who'll be joining us, including our controller, Dorothy, who's sitting in the back.
Just walked in.
So if we can get everybody in, I see Legislator Fleming in the hall. I see Peter Scully. All right. The county's water quality czar is among us. How are you, Peter? Legislator Fleming just entered. Kim Shaw, who's Natural Resources Director out in East Hampton. Kevin McDonald, Nature Conservancy. All right, thank you all for joining us. So the next item on our agenda has to do with a county-wide proposal to create a water quality district of sorts. And this is something that's been long sought, to have the funds needed to improve our water quality by reducing nitrogen entering our bays and harbors. We're also joined by Trustee Welker, Assemblyman Thiel, good to see you. Fred. What's Joe's last name? Yeah, Joe McLaughlin is coming in. We have a Gloria Burke. Come on in, everybody, from our Planning Board and Sustainability Committee. Let's get everybody seated, and we're going to begin. All right. Dieter von Lichten is here. Okay, so, Peter, are you going to be kicking this off, or is Fred kicking this off?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I think, we're going to run the PowerPoint for you. Peter, we're going to send you over to the podium here.
Great, if I can see.
You'll be able to see. All right. This is Peter Scully, was it Deputy County Executive?
Yes,
for
I'm
Water
Deputy
Quality?
County Executive for Administration, and County Executive calls me his water czar. I want to thank you, Supervisor and members of the Town Board, for providing us with an opportunity to speak with you this morning about our progress. I remember, we've been working for about 10 years on a long-term plan to deal with the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of cesspools and septic systems in Suffolk County that are really both harming the economy and dragging down, harming the economy and the environment. I remember coming out and seeing you in 2016, talking about what the long-term plan would look like, and of course, have always been working closely with stakeholder groups and, importantly, out here, Assemblyman Thiel, on a viable way of moving forward with a plan that has to meet the needs of a very diverse county, right? We have a very suburban county up island and a very rural county here. We need to meet the needs of both. And as the Assemblyman has pointed out many times, you need to both assess the problem, have a plan, and then finally find a way to implement it. And we're at the point now where we're moving forwards towards implementation. I want to acknowledge Legislator Fleming, who's been critically important in supporting our efforts on the county level, and Legislator Krupski, who's not with us this morning. So we'll take a few minutes, and then maybe Fred and Kevin can also make some comments. Can you just advance the slide? So this is a slide I use wherever I go in the county, just to point out that this is not a new problem. This is An issue that has been raised since the late 60s and early 70s. These are clips from Newsday, and the one in the top, you can't read it because it's too small. The opening paragraph is really interesting. It says, if you mention Long Island and places in the Middle East, and I have a list of places, people will wrinkle their noses and say, isn't that the place where they have cesspools? And the answer is, in 1969, that's true. Unfortunately, subsequent generations of elected officials have kind of kicked the can down the road. It's not a criticism, but an observation, but we now finally have a long-term plan. The next slide's a little bit interesting. This is a slide from Newsday from 1973, which I stuck in yesterday just because it talks about the possibility of having sewer districts on the East End. And we now know that that would not be a viable option on the East End for a lot of reasons. Cost effectiveness is one. Secondly, the presence of sewers is a concern because it could lead to land use decisions that are not consistent with community goals regarding quality of life. But there's an interesting quote from an official in the village of West Hampton. They are saying, I don't think it's ever going to come. And quite frankly, they were right. Next slide. So more than 50 years later, as indicated here, we still have more than 380,000 cesspools and septic systems in Suffolk County. About 20,000 are on commercial properties, but 360,000 plus on residential properties. We know that all three of the estuaries that we value are listed as impaired by DEC. We see increased frequency of harmful algal blooms in our region. Our region, unfortunately, has a reputation as having more of those events than any other in the United States. And we have multiple studies show that 70% of the nitrogen or excess nutrients that's fouling our surface waters comes from cesspools and septic systems. Next slide. This is a slide that the Nature Conservancy is good enough to let us use. I use it. Dr. Gober uses it. It shows folks who aren't really familiar how excess nutrients find their way into our surface waters. As indicated in the graphic, nitrogen is coming from multiple sources, including fertilizers, but the amount of nitrogen that gets into surface waters from fertilizers is dwarfed by the amount that comes from cesspools and septic systems, which is about 70%, I think. Next slide. This we use to show folks the visible signs of excess nutrients in surface waters, and the map on the top right is a cooperative effort of the Nature Conservancy and Dr. Glover's lab. Shows all of the harmful algal blooms that occurred in the region in 2022. Next slide. I don't think I need to convince anybody who's here. Also like to show people that when we run into people who are saying that cesspools and septic systems are working just fine, there's no need to replace them, that somebody must be making it up, that this is not a problem that's unique to Suffolk County. They're dealing with it all over the world, but also all over the United States. And we highlighted that one slide from paper in Hawaii because the highlighted language you can't read because it's too small. Talks about what they learned by contacting Suffolk County. And one of the things that Kevin is always pointing out is that in 2014, when the county executive declared excess nitrogen as water quality public enemy #1, the county was traveling around trying to figure out how to move forward. And at this point, other states are now calling us, asking us how we got our programs set up so quickly. And I'm talking about building a foundation for the transition away from reliance on cesspools and septics to IA systems, which was a lot of work. So don't need to convince this crowd about the consequences of nitrogen pollution in terms of water quality in the bays and harbors. Recently, Dr. Gobler has been pointing out that there are studies going on now about possible linkages between excess nitrates in water and cancers. That's a concern. I guess that research is ongoing. And we do know that excess nutrients are causing degradation of the wetlands that we rely on to protect us from storm surge. Next slide. Also anxious to tell folks who know about the environmental impacts associated with excess nitrogen in surface waters that the economic impacts are just as real. We're a community that's surrounded by water. That's what drew many people to live here, and it also draws tourists who spend billions of dollars. And when our waters are fouled and discolored and our beaches are closed, it has negative impacts on our economy. Next slide. So what is our clean water plan? It's really not simple in the overall scheme of things. How can we replace over time hundreds of thousands of systems that are not designed to remove nitrogen with systems that that can. I mean, the county executive pointed out when he recruited me over that when you see a number like 360,000, it'd be easy just to put your hands up in the air and say, it's hopeless, it's pointless, you can't do that. There's no way you're going to get this problem solved. His reaction and response was, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to establish clear priorities, right? We're going to make a little bit of progress year by year, and we're going to recognize that it took decades to create the problem, and it's going to take decades to solve it. But we can solve it in a generation. We just need a plan in order to do that. And so we now have that plan. It's called the Suffolk County Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan. It took about 3 years to complete, between 2016 and 2019. It was strongly supported by DEC and EPA and other stakeholders. It was funded in part by a state grant and was deemed an early action, no regrets item under the state's Long Island Nitrogen Action Plan. To replace cesspools and septic systems, or eliminate cesspools and septic systems, either by connecting parcels to sewers, and there are communities in Suffolk County where it still makes sense to do that, there are relatively few, or by replacing them with clean water septics, requires a dedicated source of funding to make it affordable for property owners, because no elected official is going to support any proposal that forces a homeowner to bear the entire cost of the capital improvement of that magnitude. It's just not a viable approach. So the issue has always been how we go about identifying a way to create a recurring revenue stream. Benefits of the plan obviously are multiple. Water quality on bays and harbors is something that this group gets, protecting groundwater, better protection of public health. There's a tremendous economic opportunity associated with all this infrastructure work, whether we're building sewers up island in some communities or installing clean water septics. We're creating jobs. This new industry that we created for the new clean water septics is a robust one. These guys are hiring, and the promise is great moving forward. And of course, we did a study that showed that the presence of an IA system has a significant benefit in terms of increasing the property value for a property owner. Next slide. So this is what we're calling now the Clean Water Plan, because its technical name, the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan, is a little bit thick and people don't really get it. A lot of people have paid tribute to it, but we're especially proud of this quote from Dr. Gobler, whose quote underscores the sound science on which it is based, and points out that he spent his whole career essentially studying the problem, and how encouraged he is to see a plan that will ultimately allow us to reverse course. We're very proud of the support we've received from Dr. Gobler and the Gobler Lab. So what do we need to implement the Clean Water Plan? We need two things. Number one, we now have about 3,000 of these clean water septics in the ground in Suffolk County, in part because of regulations that were implemented by towns, Southampton being one of them, and by Suffolk County, and in part because of our grant program. So we're managing the installations, but we need to oversee maintenance of them. One of the things we learned from other states is that if you don't have a program in place that ensures that these individual systems are inspected and maintained, they simply will not continue to function effectively. The state of Maryland apparently made a big mistake in that regard. And so as we start to ramp up this program, and the plan calls for us to be installing 6,000 of these systems a year within the next several years, we need to make sure we have a program in place that will allow us to oversee the maintenance and make sure that happens. So we need that structure of a countywide district, and we need to have a recurring source of funding to serve as a local match to make things affordable for property owners. And I just want to acknowledge here, although it may not be an issue for the town of Southampton, is that in the western portion of the county, we do have sewer districts that serve about 111,000 parcels, and there's a lot of improvement that can be made with the way those programs are administered. It's not an issue I'll get into here, I'll waste a lot of time, but part of the proposal that we have live right now is to create a countywide water quality district, but to keep the sewered and non-sewered parcels entirely separate, so that only sewered parcels contribute towards sewer operations, and that unsewered parcels pay no charge under the state authorizing legislation. We felt that was an important thing for us to do, is to make the sewer infrastructure a separate zone of assessment, so that essentially an enterprise fund then is self-sufficient. So how to go about providing a stable and recurring revenue stream. We've discussed several possibilities over the past 6 or 7 years. I came to see Jay in 2016. We were discussing the possibility of a surcharge on water bills in Suffolk County because the water bills in Suffolk County were so low. That was not well received by the water suppliers, who weren't really interested in collecting that. And people in Albany, some of the elected officials in Albany were not particularly receptive. We cast that aside. A year ago, we were talking about the possibility of a fund that was based on one that they have successfully used in the state of Maryland. They have a bay restoration program through which they address water quality issues in the Chesapeake. It's not unlike the challenges that we face. They have a bay restoration program and a bay restoration fund that's funded by a bay restoration fee. They assess a charge against each parcel of real property of $5 per month, or about $60 a year. We were discussing it because it was used successfully down there, and we thought we could point to it as something that could work. The harder we looked at it, the more we thought it might not be a good fit for Suffolk County, and you will understand why as local elected officials. We were advised that even though it's not an ad valorem-based charge, if we added it for collection purposes to the property tax bill, it would nonetheless be under the umbrella and be part of the county's property tax cap calculation. And our general fund property tax warrant is only around 50 million, a couple million less, maybe 49, 48. This charge would have generated an additional $60 million a year, making a tax cap calculation virtually impossible. So last fall, we began working with stakeholders who are supporting the long-term wastewater plan, looking at sales tax as an alternative, and we found the stakeholders kind of coalesced behind it, in part because they know the people of Suffolk County have voted repeatedly to approve the investment of sales tax revenues for water quality purposes, but there are other benefits. No increase in property taxes, no new fees. A significant portion of sales tax revenues obviously are generated by folks who visit here, not by our residents. And they felt that 1/8 of a penny is almost invisible to the average consumer, because it only amounts to about 12 cents on a $100 purchase. Next slide. So how would it work over time? These are milestone years in the life of program that assumes the program begins in 2024, showing that the 1/8 of a penny is projected to create a revenue of about just under $58 million initially, and then assuming it increases 2% year by year. Over the life of program, it would generate about $3.1 billion, which is a significant portion for use as the county's local match to leverage funding from state and federal sources in a big way. So we're kind of encouraged about what the county investment in the program could be. Next slide. So a couple things about the plan that was authorized in the state budget. By law, all the funds would have to be spent on wastewater upgrades that are consistent with the subwatershed's wastewater plan. It's a science-based plan that delineated more than 190 individual watersheds in this county and established nitrogen load reduction goals for each and every one. And it also established priority areas for system replacements. As long as that plan guides the investment, there are rails there that will make sure that the funds are spent in a way that's consistent with the goals of the plan. The law requires that 75% of the funding be used for clean water septic systems and 25% for sewers. People observe that 75% of our county is unsewered and 25% sewered. There is a board of trustees established in the law to oversee the use of the funds, and it includes robust local representation. I'll get to that in a minute. And just to make clear, because we know it's a concern, there are no new sewer projects being proposed by Suffolk County in any East End town, only clean water septics. However, we are supportive of town and villages that want to advance sewer projects in limited areas where they need to do that, and there's specific language in the state authorizing legislation that would make town and village projects eligible for funding from this fund. You know, we do have some success stories. Village of West Hampton Beach is one, thanks to the contribution that you guys made from the CPF. So we want to support those projects which are judiciously advanced by local governments. Next slide. So this is a map that just shows the priority areas delineated in the plan. Phase 2 of our plan starts in 2024. Phase 1, which is just ending in 2023, how to standing up our grant program implementing requirements for the use of the technologies in new construction, things of that nature. Building some sewer projects up island that are being funded with post-Sandy resiliency funding. You guys may be familiar with those. And just spending grant funding as it becomes available to us. Phase 2 requires us to have a stable and recurring revenue stream. But you can see where the funds would be spent. And because distance, near water areas are a high priority, there's a lot of pink on the east end. That's all I'll say. Next slide. So robust representation on this Board of Trustees that the state law would require includes the East End mayors and supervisors, a representative of the Peconic Estuary, Central Pine Barrens, a Joint Planning and Policy Commission, the South Shore Estuary Reserve, Suffolk County Village Officials Association, and Suffolk County Supervisors Association. We constructed it in a way to try and give people a high level of confidence that there's going to be local input into the way funds are used, that the legislation will require an annual plan for the use of the funding that would be approved by this Board of Trustees and then go on to the legislature. I do want to credit Fred and Kevin. Fred and I have been working on trying to find a way to advance a plan for about 3 or 4 years and trying to be preemptive and address concerns that we thought would come up, and so we think we have a good plan right here. Next slide. So accountability is a big issue for voters. There have unfortunately been instances where government on all levels, when time gets tough, will take funding that was originally intended for an environmental purpose and use it for another purpose. People will not have a confidence in a program that could allow that to happen. You should know that not only does the state law prevent that from happening, but Suffolk County modified its charter and its Environmental Bill of Rights in 2014 after a past litigation to say clearly that any use of funds that is approved by the voters, a change in the use of those funds can only be approved by the voters. So that level of confidence is in both the state law and in the county charter. The funds would essentially go into a lockbox to make sure they're used for water quality purposes. We have this idea of a Board of Trustees. I'm not sure if the state legislation that was just approved has the advisory committee in it or not. We'll figure that out. And the state law does require an annual independent audit and an annual report to the Suffolk County Legislature on the program. So we're pretty happy with the accountability provisions. Next slide. So this again, there are areas in the county where we go to present where folks are not really familiar with IA systems, but happily in Southampton that's not the case. Both Southampton and East Hampton have robust IA programs, and there are millions of these systems in the ground all over the world. They're effective, they're durable, they're proven to work, and once in a while we get a question from somebody who thinks that we've invented them or something, but we know that in Japan, some of the systems that were installed in the 1970s are still functioning and still operating just fine. Next slide. Again, showing them that the homeowners can place these systems and the ports that are necessary to access them in ways that are not hard to look at. Next slide. So this is a little bit difficult to see given the size of the slide of the screen, but suffice it to say that our grant program is doing very well. We have received almost 4,000 applications. I think we're administering both Suffolk County's own septic improvement program and then the state septic system replacement fund, which has awarded Suffolk County $40 million of the $45 million awarded statewide. This has been a consistent trend because our program is viable. The state legislature, with Fred's support, created the septic system replacement fund, I think in 2018, $75 million, and said we're going to release it in tranches of $15 million. So if you divide the $15 million by the number of counties, which is 62, each county would receive $241,000 or something like that. We, in the first year, were surprised to receive $10 million of the $15 million, or 70% of the funding, again in the second round, and more recently, they just awarded us $20 million. So of the $45 million they've awarded, we've received 40, which is just stunning. Next slide. These are figures that I think are going to be of interest to people. These are grant-funded installations to date under our program, and the amount of grant funding under both the county program and the state program. And you can see that in the towns that have CPF-funded programs, That's where the installations are. I don't know if you can see the numbers in Southampton and East Hampton, but they dwarf the numbers in the other towns. There's a lot more interest out here. Next slide. This again is a projection of activity based on the Clean Water Plan or Sub-Watersheds Wastewater Plan, which is really, this is the number of parcels in the priority areas that would be served first in each town. And it shows that because of proximity to groundwater or surface water, much of the activity would be centered in the East End towns. It's true for Southampton and East Hampton, where if you compare the population percentage to the amount of system replacements or funding that would be directed here, I think that it's pretty clear the East End fares pretty well, and it's even true for Southold, a conversation I'm anxious to have with Legislator Krupski. Next slide. So this is a Newsday editorial that was published shortly after the Clean Water Plan or Sub-Watersheds Wastewater Plan was released in 2019. And we particularly like the quote that we pulled out saying it's time to take a stand. Lawmakers should either let Suffolk residents vote on the county's proposal to fund the war on nitrogen or offer their own plan, neither silence or obstruction are options. We like that messaging. Since that editorial was published, the Suffolk County Legislature on March 17th, 2020 unanimously approved the findings resolution for the Sub-Watersheds Wastewater Plan, so they have advanced it and due in no small part to the hard work of Legislator Fleming, who's been a constant supporter. Next slide. So here's I'd say this is about 3 or 4 weeks old, this list of supporters of the Clean Water Plan who are urging the governor to make sure it was included in the state budget. This list is now outdated. There are many more groups who are expressing support for allowing the voters to decide this fall. And we're happy about that. We've been doing a lot of outreach. It's a very, very diverse county, but there's something for everybody in this plan, even less affluent communities which have historically been left behind. So we're getting a lot of support from a lot of diverse groups. Next slide. So what's next? Well, I'm happy to report that as a result of a lot of hard work from people in organized labor, in the environmental community, and a lot of hard work by Sundley and Thiel, the Suffolk County Water Quality Restoration Act language that everybody was hoping to see in the state budget is in the New York State budget. I want to acknowledge that and thank Fred for all his leadership. And so now we'll pivot to the local process and be talking to Suffolk County legislators about their role in trying to advance a ballot measure on Election Day. It's been 5 or 6 years of hard work, but we think we're really feeling really good about where we are right now and really hopeful for the future. I'll turn it over to you guys if you want to make some comments.
Hey, Peter.
Well, thank you, and a tough act to follow to explain the county's plan. And it's good to be here. Good to see all of you again this morning. And the state of New York has a budget. It was only 1 month and 1 day late. And in response to that, I always say, the two most beautiful sights that I know of are Long Beach at sunset on Noyac Bay and Albany in my rear view mirror. And today that's especially true. But the budget's done. This proposal was part of that. I'm not going to repeat everything Peter said, but I'll try to highlight a little bit of what happened in Albany and what the legislation does in maybe a little bit more detail. And the state of New York has been, as Peter said, has been involved with the county and involved in this clean water effort on a number of different levels. As he mentioned, there's the state has a thing every year. It's called the Water Quality Infrastructure Bond Act. We've been putting $500 million a year into that. Part of that was the $75 million that Peter mentioned that is exclusively for the funding and rebates and incentives for IA systems, and there's a reason why Suffolk gets most of the money, because that's the way we wrote the bill. And because really Suffolk has really been ahead of everybody else in the state when it comes to this issue. Part of that is because we get our drinking water from underwater aquifers. So there's been that money. There's been the money that the state puts into the Water Quality Technology Center that Dr. Goldberg heads, that's been involved in trying to create additional options and workable IA systems, new technology in that regard. And of course, we have an Environmental Bond Act. All of these things, there's federal infrastructure money, all of which can be used towards this effort. But to kind of put into perspective why this legislation was needed, we've had the state money that's from the Water Quality Infrastructure Bond Act dedicated to this. We've had the money that the county has utilized also to supplement its program. We added the 20% for water quality infrastructure to the Community Preservation Fund, which the towns such as Southampton and East Hampton in particular are utilizing as incentives for IA systems and incentives and rebates. All of those things that are in place so far, and what you'll see in Peter's numbers is that there's 360,000 septic systems in Suffolk County, and so far we've installed 1,500. So if we continue at this particular pace, sometime in the 22nd century, we will have accomplished our goal, and that's just not acceptable. As Peter said, it's not something you can do overnight, but it is something you can do in a generation. And if you're going to do it in a generation, you have to have the resources to do that, and you need a local recurring source of funds to be able to leverage more state dollars, the federal dollars that are available to implement this program in a timely fashion. So that's really where the legislation came about. I'll just kind of give you an overview of the bill, of the legislation that was in the budget. It really has three parts, and Peter's kind of alluded to all of them at one time or another. But one is the county wanted to be able to consolidate its existing sewer districts, the county sewer districts, not any of the local sewer districts, towns, or villages. And this bill allows them to do that. The second thing that the bill does is we have an existing quarter penny program that's been in effect for a long time. And this legislation extends that program until 2060. So that's the drinking water protection program. And the third part is really what we're focused on today, and that is the funding to implement this plan, that would be dedicated to implement this plan. It's an additional 0.125% sales tax that would go to this program, subject to mandatory referendum. So the voters would have to vote for it. And I'm just going to highlight in my remaining time just a few of the things that I thought were important coming from the East End to make sure that this legislation was fair to everybody, but particularly on the East End, because there's a history here. And we wanted to make sure that the East End was treated fairly. And as Peter alluded to, one of those things to ensure fairness, and that this is a need-based program, and the money goes where the need is, and that is to these areas along the coastline that are the highest priority to have septic systems removed and replaced, is that 75% of all the money that's generated has to go for IA systems, at least 75%. And after that, the remainder is for sewage treatment infrastructure. So roughly 75% of all the real property, individual parcels, are on individual septic systems. A great portion of those, percentage-wise, are on the East End, and that's, the money, we are ensuring that at least 75% of the money goes there. The second thing that I thought that was very important representing this area was that while we need a countywide wastewater district to manage this, and there are existing sewer districts that are county sewer districts that are involved with this. We don't want to pay for that. You know, there's this eighth of a percent sales tax that is going for this program, but when you consolidate the existing sewer districts, those sewer districts are operated with property taxes. And so the legislation has express provisions, which Peter mentioned, which is the non-sewered area and the sewered areas are separated. And there is no authority to impose any taxes in the outside of the sewered area for the sewer district. So it'll be one sewer district consolidated, but and all of those will be the county. I think there's 27 of them will be consolidated into one, but that will be paid for in assessment areas, and it expressly states that the county can't impose, has no authority outside of those areas that are sewered. Also, we have infrastructure needs here on the East End. Different towns for different parts of their towns are looking at sewage treatment options, particularly around downtown business districts, and that certainly is the case for the town of Southampton. So we wanted to make sure that, yes, IA systems, but where we do have sewage treatment needs, that the East End towns would be eligible for that. In fact, all towns would be eligible for that, and they are. We wanted to ensure that home rule was protected where there are existing town and village sewer districts, and we have some of those on the East End, Sag Harbor, Riverhead, for example, that their autonomy is respected, and that this doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. And then lastly, that the voters would have the right to a referendum. So, overall, the way this was drafted, and it had a great amount of input, and I want to acknowledge also, Kevin McDonald, who's going to speak next. I mean, a lot of time was working with the county to really kind of craft this in a way that it would be fair to everybody. I think we took the time, and the provisions are in it to do that, so that it's science-based, it's need-based, and all areas of the county are going to be treated fairly in the appropriation of resources to address this problem. And then, finally, as I said, it's subject to mandatory referendum. The voters get to decide. So that's kind of an overview of the bill, and I'll turn it over to Kevin. If anybody has any questions, I guess we'll take them all at the end.
Just one quick question. So the plan is to have it on this November's ballot?
Well, you'll have to talk to the county about that. The county legislature would have to pass a local law or a resolution, I think, with regard to the sales tax to put it on the ballot. And that will be a decision for the county legislature. It is written in a way, there's no sunset on this. It doesn't. Hopefully it's this year, but if it wasn't this year, it certainly goes into the future. So that's a county legislative a decision for the county legislature and to make. And as you all know, because we did a community housing referendum last year, the deadline for that is like the first week in August. It's 90 days before Election Day. So it's May now. August is, it's 3 months away. So those are decisions that the county legislature has to make, and the time frame is fairly tight.
All right, thank you, Fred.
All right, thanks.
August 7th.
All right, you're up next, Kevin.
I am. I'll be brief, knowing that there are more questions that people want to have answers. So there have been, efforts over the last 15 or 20 years to have a comprehensive strategy for nitrogen reduction from sewage. It has been a long road. What these guys just described as seemingly well thought through and well balanced, none of it was easy. And there was a lot of yelling and screaming and some really difficult conversations with a number of parties to get us to this point. And to quote my good friend, Buzz Schwenk, if there was anything easy about this, I missed it. And that's still true, and what that really means is anything worthwhile obtaining is just hard. And, you know, it's none of that is covered in both their presentations, so there is a debt of gratitude if we succeed in this that all of us will owe. In particular because this is the opportunity which we saw 10 years ago, and the theory was if we can get federal, state, county, and town resources committed to a comprehensive strategy to change out polluting septic systems in favor of clean technology, we can probably see water quality in less than 10 years improve. Less than 10 years. And it's been about 10 years to realize that strategy, but we do. We have federal, state, county, if we pass this, and town funds committed to this objective. The opportunity to scale up from 2 or 3 or 400 units a year per town is transformative in its potential if we can work to achieve that. And that's my interest, that's the Nature Conservancy's interest, that's the interest of a number of organizations and environmental groups that have been working on this for the last 10 or 15 years. And we're really hopeful that, I have high confidence that if we can get to the ballot, this will pass. And your support before the Suffolk County Legislature in the not too distant future will be appreciated, and I really do hope to see you at those hearings. So I'll stop, and if there's any questions, out of respect for time, I thank you again for your continued interest in this issue and for good thinking on water quality in the short period to get there. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Kevin. I certainly appreciate you guys teaming up to come up with a solution that's gonna work. And some of the earlier proposals I had concerns about, you know, ad valorem, you know, where our area is like a third of the tax base for the county, would put an undue burden on the East End and the per parcel. I didn't think that was perfect. Was better than ad valorem. But this proposal that spreads it out to visitors as well as residents and does it over, you know, a logical amount of time, reasonable, not overnight, but within our, hopefully, a lifetime, so we can see that water quality. I want to allow people to ask questions. I have one, and maybe it's to you, Peter. You want to just come up here?
If I must.
And first let me say is, I really like how you did this in terms of protecting the East End. And I know that a lot of that came from Fred and Kevin too, because we haven't seen that in the past where, you know, there's safeguards. Because when it comes to the county legislature, we have very capable representatives who fight like hell for us, but we're outnumbered population-wise. And if there aren't protections, we often don't get our fair share. And you hear it all the time from us. And we saw it with public safety, which is like 0.3%, where there were no guarantees that we'd get our fair share. The quarter penny, which was originally sold to us as half of it was going for open space preservation, which would go to the East End, and the other half was going to ASRF, the sewer stabilization, and that would help Western Suffolk. And today, I think most of the quarter penny is going to Western Suffolk. So, and the general sales tax as well, the close to 4%. This is good because it's based on science. It's based on the watershed study, which I think is a sub-watershed study that's really important. It's got representation on the board. So it's really more of a thank you for putting together a proposal that has intrinsic protection for the East End. I, for one, am very supportive of it. And, you know, I typically do not like increases to taxes of any kind, including sales tax. But this is so critical to our economy overall that we have to do something. But it's more, I'm not even sure it's a question. So it's really more of a thank you for building that protection in.
Yeah, so if you agree that the status quo is not acceptable and that you need to find a way to make the investment, then you have to have a plan that makes the decisions based on sound science. And then with regard to the diversity of the county and the different interests, I mean, Fred and Kevin and I have been talking about this for 4 years, and you need you need support from your state officials, and as I told Fred 2 days ago, I have long recognized that if Fred was neutral, I might have a shot, right? Right? If Fred was against it, I'm not going anyplace, right? And so if Fred's supportive, I have a pretty good chance. And, you know, the first time I sat down with him, he said, you have to understand, just like he said here today, there's a history here. People out here need to be protected. They need to know that the protections are ironclad. You need to build them in here, and that's the only way you're going to get people's confidence. So there's a method to that, right? So one of the things that Fred has been saying in recent weeks is you need to make sure people know that we've addressed the concerns of the East End, but that this plan is fair to everybody. You know, it's not just an East End plan. But with regard to the concerns that you've just voiced about past history and whether past Suffolk County legislatures have made decisions that were not in the best interest of the East End because they have the votes, the way this is structured, those things really can't happen, right? And so we're really pleased about that, and we're interested to see how the dialogue goes, because, you know, this is a unique situation in which, for the first time, organized labor, the building trades, the environmental groups, and even business organizations are all aligned in saying, we know this is the status quo is not sustainable. We know we need to do something. They're all endorsing this plan. They're even supportive of the funding split, 75 for IAs and 25% sewers. There was some dialogue about that over the past couple of weeks, and they all stepped up and said, no, we're solid on it. So we're feeling pretty good right now. A year ago, we weren't feeling this good, and we're very hopeful about the next 6 months.
Where do we end up in terms of our overall sales tax? Are we still competitive with Nassau and New York City? Or are we going to be higher than
We would be
our neighbors?
we would be an eighth of a penny higher than Nassau, but still lower than New York City and Westchester, our neighboring counties.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's driving to Nassau to save an eighth of a penny. So.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
But you know, we look forward to continuing our work with the East End towns on water quality. There's a higher level of awareness out here on the part of the governments, and you know, we have programs that show that. You know, the CPF-based programs really made the bulk of the activity under our grant program has really taken place by the numbers in 2 towns, right, in East Hampton and Southampton. So we look forward to continuing.
While you're up there, any other questions from the board?
Well, you know, it kind of reminds me of Charlie Wilson's War. And the reason I say that, if people aren't aware of what that is that you spend a lot of money up front and then you don't think about what you're going to do into the future. This plan does that, and I'm so happy to hear this. I support this completely. You know, we've had these discussions over the years, you know, what happens on the East End, how does that work, how is maintenance paid? How does a homeowner have an accrued cost or valuation added to their properties? All these conversations that we've had, and I see it's all captured here. I just got to say, well done, Peter, and well done, all you guys. This is fantastic, and I totally support it.
Great.
So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunities. If anybody thinks of a question they forgot to ask, obviously they'll need to reach out to us, and we'll look forward to working with you in the months ahead.
Don't go anywhere.
Well,
yet.
I did have the one question. Where does the federal infrastructure money fit into this?
Well, the bipartisan infrastructure law funds are being dispersed through the state of New York, through EFC and DEC. And so you need to make application specifically for those funds. We had early on, I'm going to say in March 2021, at the urging of some of the congressional offices, we developed a countywide federal funding infrastructure ask that included an ask for $21 million for IAs. And there is no explicit, as of yet, IA-based program, but we're hopeful that, you know, we're going to be able to unlock federal funding for IAs as well as sewers. So all of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding and all the Bond Act funding are all being passed through the state, and so we're, you know, yesterday they went live with information about how to apply for Bond Act funding. Staff is looking at that right now. And then, you know, we also, you know, county executive is also looking at ways over the short term that we can provide some financial support, not only for IAs, additional funding support, and also for local government sewer initiatives. And we'll probably be talking to, I mean, he may have been talking to the supervisor already about ways we can help you with those things as well. So, we're hoping that, one of the reasons that we were able to get $40 million of the $45 million in state septic system replacement funds is because we had a local match. We had our program, and it shows that's what the key is to unlocking large amounts of funding. So we're very hopeful
What
about
is the current county grant max? Is it 22 now or 20?
We can give you a grant of $10 million from $10,000 of county funding, $10,000 of state funding. And then we have a low to moderate income bonus or grant of $5,000, and then a $5,000 bonus, I think, for either a polishing unit or a drain field, a shallow drain field. So theoretically, the right applicant could obtain as much as $30,000, and if they're located in a CPF town that has its own program, they can do even better.
John, what's ours, 20?
20, up 20.
Yeah, so
Up to
there
20.
are a lot of instances in the CPF towns where a system goes in the ground without any out-of-pocket expense. The county executive has always been adamant that we want people to know, theoretically, they could replace a septic system with a septic system right now, but we want it to be less expensive for them to put in an IA. That's what our goal has been. And we've been focused for the last 3 or 4 years on failures and catastrophic failures, situations where people have to make a decision quickly about replacing a system. And so the county executive and members of the legislature were like, you have to find a way to get to those people before they make a decision to spend more money to put old technology in the ground. And we've worked to do that, and successfully. It meant making staff available on weekends, going to sites on weekends and things of that nature. But it's been good. It's a lot of change of culture in the health department, by the way they think about some of these things. And that's what you need to think outside the box to get the job done.
Any other questions?
Just to
Very
follow on to this will be my last question. The issue that's always been of concern is if we have a catastrophic storm and we have these IA systems that are in place, and we've talked about this before, insurance companies and whether that's covered, who actually owns the system, in our case, when it comes from a grant. I'm still not sure that we answered that question completely. So maybe we can have some time and sit down and sort of go through that so I can better deliver that back to the constituents. We got over the tax issue. Now, this is another issue that seems to be coming up is if we have a storm and the system is destroyed, who actually owns that system? And then the long-term maintenance cost, which I think you've captured pretty well here, but I just need to understand it a little bit better. But
Yeah,
where does that stop?
happy to have those discussions. I'll just say real briefly that the current Suffolk County Sanitary Code provision that the legislature approved in 2016, Article 19 of the Sanitary Code, kind of set the regulatory framework for the use of IAs. And how it addresses maintenance is that it requires that a homeowner have a maintenance contract, like many people do have a maintenance contract for, say, their oil burner or another component. The initial installation of a system is required to include 3 years of maintenance, but then it's on the homeowner. And so our policing that universe is one way to approach it. We have 3,000 of them in the ground right now. But once you're scaling up to putting tens of thousands of these systems in the ground, is policing the individual homeowner the best way? Maybe not. I mean, maybe the best way to do it is for the government, like it does in many towns, to let a contract for system maintenance, get economy of scale, and make sure that the systems are maintained and the homeowners don't need to worry about it. That's something that policymakers will have to come to grips with.
Great. Well, I said I support it, now I support it even more, so thank you.
I just have two things. From a longtime plumbing family, I'm really happy that the local plumbers 200 is supporting this, so I think that's fantastic. I saw it on the list. Also, thank you for putting a member of the Conic Estuary Partnership as well as the East End Supervisors on the Board of Directors for the Improvement District. I think that says a lot about the commitment to the East End and the waters out here. So
Right. Well, that's part and parcel of making sure that people don't feel that they're, at the end of the day, they're not going to be treated fairly, right? You want local buy-in, you want local involvement in the decision-making process, and you want a transparent process that everybody has eyes on, right?
right. That will outlive all of us and move forward. Thank you.
So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, you can sit, but don't leave. Because I know, this is a hybrid meeting, we potentially have people even online who may have questions. But first Bridget, did you want an opportunity to address us as a legislator or elected?
Thank you. No, I mean, I'm here to listen. I'm fully supportive. I'm so proud to be here at this moment in time because we have been working on it for an awful long time. And I appreciated Kevin's comment about the discussions and the challenging discussions that have brought us to this place. But we've got a lot more work to do, so I'm really excited to be part of this, and we need the support of all the towns, and I think we're hearing it, so that's
Well,
good.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your leadership on this issue and representing us. Okay, anybody who is here from our audience, Dieter van Leesten? Was I close? I've been working on it for 8 years. It's my last year. If I don't get it right this year, I'm out of luck.
I'm Dieter van Leesten, co-chair of the Southampton Sustainability Committee. I want to thank you, all of you, on this issue. I've been working on that for a long time, on the lowest level, but very much involved with Chris Kobler on this. I have one issue. I've been approached by a manufacturer of septic remedial systems. The complaint was the time it takes to get a permission is endless. It starts with 1 year trial and then it adds another 3 years before a system is approved. It costs them a lot of money, a lot of time, and we're losing time for additional good systems to be introduced. Is there any way on the administrative side to shorten the cycle of permission? That's the question.
Okay, no, I understand the question, so I'll have to ask Mr. Scully if he can respond to that. So, Peter, there are other competitive systems, having more systems approved would certainly or potentially lower the price through competition. So where is the county?
I can speak
Yeah.
to that. Right, so,
We need to go.
Peter, you have to come
Yeah,
in. Can I ask you one question before you get on? How can we get that slide presentation? Is it possible to get that?
yeah, I can provide it, if you just give me an email address.
We have it. Jackie has it, so we can.
We can. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
So that's a really important issue. So there, throughout the earlier part of the millennia, there were, some stakeholders who were encouraging the county just allow the use of technologies in the county. And the county executive said, well, we have a history here. In the 1990s, there's a sewage technology called the denitrification system, which the county allowed to be piloted to see if it would work. And there was a court action by some developers and ultimately led to the installation of thousands of the systems in the ground, and it turned out they weren't really working very well. So the county executive said, no, let's make sure we have a process in place that requires that manufacturers show that their technologies work here, and we have a kind of a stage certification process. It's among the most stringent that we're aware of, but the most important thing I can say about it is that experience has shown that it's a good thing that we have that, because there are a couple of technologies that have received provisional approvals from us or initial approvals from us, which just are not meeting the 19 milligram per liter standard that we have in our sanitary code. So perfectly willing to take a look at the process to see whether or not there's anything we could do to shorten it up for a specific technology. But all of the technologies that are being used have been through this kind of rigorous vetting to show, that they're actually capable of performing. That's worth a separate discussion, and I'd bring staff out to talk about it. But in response to this specific concern, I'm perfectly willing to see, what exactly the issues are and what, if anything, we could do to expedite the process.
Can I ask I know the Stony Brook Clean Water Institute, they have a system that they've been working on that seems very promising. I know there's been some pilot programs. Do you have a status update on that? Because it seems like it would be less expensive and less maintenance as well, and a higher level of nitrogen reduction.
Yeah, so they have several different technologies, two of which are before us, and just last week received the initial provisional approval for one of their nitrogen-reducing biofilters. They're being we're trying to be as helpful as possible because we're invested in what they're doing. But the first of the technologies to receive provisional approval, that happened last week. The initial goal was to establish a system that would treat down to 10 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen, cost no more than $10,000, and last for 30 years. The challenges with the technologies really have been cost. They're trying to figure that out, and the size of the footprint. I'm not really qualified to talk to you about in detail about what they're doing, but they are advancing through the process, and they did receive provisional approval. So last week was a great week for Dr. Gobler, and it brings their work into a new phase. Now they're working with industry installers. They will respond to our grant program solicitation of quotes. They will be added to the list of technologies that can be used by homeowners, with the pricing and all that sort of thing. So an historic step last week for them in terms of one of their technologies getting provisional approval.
That's great.
So just on that same issue, that I think it's kind of fascinating, because you mentioned it before, you go to other countries and you see a lot of these systems are already in place and already working, they have a history. And many of them are coming here, and we have some in our inventory as well, which are functioning really well. And the pilot program, I think, you and I had talked about a pilot program for a Swedish system that's, but to be open to that, I think it's really critical, particularly going into the future. As the technologies changes, you'll also be able to change with those technologies, and they're interchangeable alternates for these systems. That it's something to think about going into the future, that you're not necessarily linked to one type of system, but if it reaches the end of its life and you're going to change that, you want to up those technologies as well, so you can stay in, congruent with the technologies as they go forward.
Right, and so with the addition of the Center for Clean Water Technology nitrogen reducing bioreactor, there are now seven individual technologies that have received provisional approval, and 2 have received general approval.
Good.
So it's an important part of a very complex overall program, and we're really kind of proud of the health department and the way they've managed this kind of transition to a completely different use of technology. And I have to tell you that none of it would be possible without support we've received from the state of New York. We just, I was at DEC for a long time before I came back to the county to do this. And while I was at DEC, then Senator Laval called me one day and said, "What are we going to do about nitrogen?" I said, "Well, I just heard County Executive Ballone, announce that nitrogen pollution is public water enemy number 1. They have a sophisticated health department. We should probably assist Suffolk County and let them staff up and do what they're doing." And it's a result of support from the state, and Fred's been stalwart, that we have the sophisticated staff necessary to do this work. I'm just really proud of them.
Thank you, Peter.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from our attendees, Margaret?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. So excited about what I'm hearing. I am the chairperson of the Hampton Bays CAC. I'm not speaking or commenting as such. And I'm also...
Just identify yourself for our record.
Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Margaret Friedlander. I'm a resident of Hampton Bays. I'm also a candidate for trustee for the town of Southampton. But I'm speaking now as a resident and loving what I'm hearing. And my background is marketing communications for large global agencies in New York and global clients. So when I hear all this, excited, anxious to see it happen. And I very much respect, as a program and project manager on the corporate side, I can only imagine what it took, as Kevin mentioned, to put all of this together. And now the point that I just want to bring up, and I'm sure you've already all thought of it, is how does it get to the residents? So I'm a homeowner. I would love this on my property. It's the standard questions. Who do I reach out to? How does it happen? Any kind of home project, you're getting estimates, you're asking questions. So how does this happen? And so I think and an awareness and an omni-channel awareness and education level from state, county, local governments is really needed. And there are many ways to do it that make that barrier to entry or the lack of knowledge available to people who, especially if you're talking about a tax, I agree with you, it's nominal, but now to kind of, no pun intended, take it downstream and give the information to the end user to remove any barriers or answer any questions, I think is really important.
Just quick on that, I mean, there are mandates in certain areas, and these funds, as far as I understand, they're available to people even if you're required to do the system, but all new construction throughout the county, new home construction, has to have an IA system, and then we have in certain priority areas, expansions. I think throughout the county, all failed systems, right, when they're replaced, that's another area where the county requires them. But there are people who voluntarily want to just do the right thing and switch technologies and might not be in a priority area.
Agreed. Which is why I'm saying, right now, if I were interested, I know I'm myself is information gatherer, and so I'm self-motivate. But there are other people that may not be aware or may not be as
Sure, and maybe
And Mark-
Janice can address this, Janice Shearer, our planning and development.
Well, for this
administrator.
particular funding, it still needs to, it's subject to a public referendum. So
Oh,
that would have-
and
yeah.
that's my point. So if you're taking
So
this to the
there'll
public,
be public outreach and, on this.
exactly, this is all encompassing end to end. If
Well, this
you're
will
asking
provide
for a
significantly more funding, but we do have funding now. This,
And
This will scale up the funding to meet the need.
Doing it.
exactly, I guess my bullet point is just an awareness effort so that
Right.
people understand what the tax is for. You've covered a lot of bases where people might have an issue, fair share, distribution, all of that. Now it's a matter of how does the public get educated and understand from end to end. And then for those who, just want to be aware of what this tax is about and that this is even happening. And then those that want to, independently raise their hand.
all right, Janice?
Thank you, and thank you so much. This is very exciting. I just would like to mention that we do have Emily Ifstration, who works in the CPF office, and Emily we stole her from Suffolk County, sorry, but she ran the Suffolk County grant program, and now she runs our IA system program. We worked with, there's Kim Shaw and Melissa from East Hampton in the audience right now. We've worked together, Southampton and East Hampton, to create a joint flyer so that our programs kind of match and are the same. There's some differences, but just in terms of rolling it out so we coordinate, let's call it the benefit from Suffolk County and their grant application program and ours, so people can put that money together. And as you know, you've taken off even income restrictions, so because everyone flushes, there's no real issue there. Anybody who wants to get grant money, it is available, and we've made it as easy as possible, and we constantly look for ways, Jackie Fenlon and Emily and I and Kim and the whole team from East Hampton, and we work together to try to coordinate all our programs. And as you know, we set up the whole water quality committee, and then East Hampton has their water quality committee, so we're always like lessons learned. When we first rolled out the program, you may recall Laura Toomey and Concerned Citizens of Montauk put on a huge presentation and outreach effort, and we can probably do something like that again to get a new fresh infusion of buzz. But on our website, for the benefit of anybody who's listening to this or wants to know how do they apply, you can go and just type in water quality on the town's website. A box pops up, you type in your address, it tells you if you're eligible. It gives you it's a very simple form. We don't do the tax returns anymore, none of that. You go straight to Emily, they kind of reserve the money for you. You go to Suffolk County, you get your permits, you do everything, and then we pay out the contractors. The town does, so we even bypass that. So each year we're trying to perfect this and make it easier, more user-friendly, and not as many obstacles. So
And Janice, there are things that our grant can be used for that the county grant can't.
Yes, so our grant allows you, like, say you had to, rip out a tree or fix your landscaping, or, you had to do something along those lines. We do allow that reimbursement to cover, you can't, create the Taj Mahal where we require before and after pictures, but we do allow for that, and we do cover the cost of the maintenance contract for the first year, I think, or more, for the first year.
Are we looking to expand the locational standard so that more
Yes.
people can
Yes.
qualify?
Also, we have an update to our water quality plan pending, where we took the information from CDM Smith and the county that has done quite an extensive modeling effort and updated our maps where the county has indicated priority areas over time. Our maps encompass those priority areas now, so that we are even ahead of the curve when it comes to, they're trying to roll it in and phase it in, and we're saying it's all eligible as far as town grant money at this
So
point.
we just need a local law, though, to make that match, right? Because right now, we're at the 2-year window in terms of
Travel time.
groundwater travel time.
0 to 2 new construction.
Yes, actually, we
That's
didn't do that local law yet, but we
Yeah.
have an update that we've been preparing.
So that is
So
coming.
that is coming,
Okay,
yes.
good. Peter, do you want
Just,
to?
to
weigh in on
respond
that?
to the resident. So, when we rolled out the program, initially thought we were going to need to go out and sell it to people, and we're doing a lot of outreach. We have found over the last several years that we can't keep up with the pace, and so we don't really need to sell it. But if you go to reclaimourwater.info, you can get all the information that you need, and we created a nice electronic application process where you can upload all the documents from your home and get information about the cost, because we did the solicitation of quotes from the manufacturer, so that information is all out there. How all that will change if we get into a broader program where we're doing thousands a year, I mean, there's going to be a real need to communicate with people about the change in program, so it's spot on.
All right, other questions or comments from our attendees? Sure, 100%. Of course.
Thank you. I also want to know who made this darling. Is it Peter Guardiello? Because that's my guess. I'm so glad to be here with all of you. But I did want to just note, I know we've got the press here, and this is a very, very large undertaking, and we're just beginning it. This is a focus on the East End because we want to reassure East End officials, as I've been reassured as an East End official, that this is very fair to the East End. But I do want to emphasize that this is a very well-balanced program that is addressing the septic problems across the county. There's been enormous investment on the western part of the county with regard to sewer programs, and we do have a very different approach to water quality on the two sort of ends of the county. So for purposes of my colleagues on the western end, I also want to just ensure folks that this is in fact a very well balanced program that is intended to address both the West End and the East End. And these guide rails that are in place for the East End are unique because historically we haven't had them there, but they're there because there is such an enormous investment on the western part, and that they have lots and lots of sewering on the western part of the county that we're not able to do. So glad to give the reassurances to the East End, but I don't want the takeaway to be that this is an East End program, because it certainly is not. There's a lot of effort to make sure that the West End, where they have beach closures all the time because of water contamination and also have serious problems with surface water contamination, that is also being addressed with this program.
Bridget, before you say it sounds like the ball's sort of in the Suffolk County Legislator's court in
Yes.
terms of putting this on the ballot.
Correct. And thank you, Fred, for sending it our way, because we're ready to take it on.
All right, so it is.
By the way, that's what these little water drops mean. They mean that we support them. So if you want one, let my office know, and we'll figure out how to get you
So
one.
are you anticipating that it will pass the legislature and be put on the ballot in November?
Well, Jay, you sat in my seat, so predicting success on a vote is something that I would never want to enter into. I respect the debate that we're about to have with all of the colleagues on the 18 different districts in the legislature, because each has their concerns. But everyone, I think, recognizes that this is an enormous problem that has been literally buried for many, many years and decades even. And I think there is support, certainly, with the leadership of the county executive and Deputy County Executive Scully. We definitely have a lot of muscle and strength behind the arguments. Also, I think what Kevin talked about, the difficulty that the challenges that have been faced and overcome in getting to a place where this huge, expensive problem can be solved in a reasonable way that doesn't create too much of a burden on any particular part of the county, any particular homeowner, is really appreciated by folks who are looking at it. So that'll be our job, my team and Legislator Krupski, and I'm glad to see our Supervisor Jerry Siller is here from Shelter Island. We'll need everyone, and
Hey,
East
Jerry.
Hampton is here. We'll need everyone to continue to advocate to the legislature because it's a big vote to take, but it's been very, very well thought out, and I think I'm anticipating that we're going to have success as long as we do our job right.
All right, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
My understanding is we're going to be moving it along now. The next step is a resolution. We will have plenty of opportunity for debate and public comment, but I do expect in the summer we will be voting on sending it to the voters for the November ballot. That's my goal.
Yeah, no,
personally.
we miss a year, we lose $60 million. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
You
It's a
know,
great
so
point.
it's, time is of the essence here, I believe.
And I think
August.
the leadership of the county executive, of the advocacy organizations, of our state leaders is not lost on the folks who are making decisions on funding at the federal level and the state level. And it's why we got 10 out of 15 million initially and continue to get that money, is because this is how thoughtful the leadership is on getting this problem solved. So, I hope that it'll move nicely in the
Thank you, Bridget.
legislature. Thank you.
Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Kevin McDonald, one quick item. So I appreciate some of the comments from folks about, what does the day after this ballot measure pass look like and how do we scale up? I mean, my whole pitch before was this is the opportunity to scale up. And as most of you know, the story of Tate's Cookies, it was a young girl who worked at her father's farm stand and baked the cookies in her house. And she brought them out to her father's farm stand and then sold the cookies when people came home from the beach and bought corn. If Tate operated today the same way she did when she was 13 years old, it would be impossible, right? So the success of this ballot measure literally will transform the way the towns and the county interface with the public as they scale up to, instead of 300 or 400 or 500 units a year, it's thousands. And that's a great conversation to have, and I look forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, now, anyone else? All right, Charles, are we taking online folks with questions? No? Okay, so we do that for our town board meetings. We probably don't typically do it at work sessions,
Right.
and we're sort of within a work session.
Jay, I'd like to recognize someone. We have Terry Diep from the Village of North Haven. She's a trustee, and thank you for your work on water quality in the village as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, as was mentioned, Supervisor Siller in the back there
Mhm.
from the town of Shelter Island. All right, so hearing no other questions or comments, we'll end this. Thank you, all of you, for presenting. It's really an incredible initiative. Thanks. This is the culmination of, it's not quite the culmination yet, but of many, many years of hard work. So thank you for devoting yourselves to this really, mammoth issue that could have the ability to transform our waters back to what they once were, pristine. So thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you.
What did somebody
Let us know the first day we could knock up the water from
Oh, but Jan said the water's going right there. Are we rolling right in? or
All right,
waiting?
all right. No, we're not done with work session, so, if everybody, the town board has just a little bit more business to take care of, so you want to take, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Take a 5-minute recess, we can say hello. All right, make a motion to recess for 5 minutes.
Second.
Brief updates, and then we'll have executive session. One thing I wanted to share was this news release from the police department that on May 2nd of '23, Police Chief Kiernan and PO, the police officer Keith Phillips were in Albany attending MAD's recognition of Excellence Award ceremony. That's a Mothers Against, is it distracted driving? Or?
Destructive decisions.
Destructive decisions. It used to be drunk driving, right? Destructive decisions.
It's catchy.
P.O. Phillips was recognized for his work as a DRE, a drug recognition expert. Sergeant Nichols Bagdagliaca was also honored for his diligence in keeping Southampton Town safe through his driving while intoxicated enforcement. Chief Kiernan was presented with an award for the Southampton Town Police Department, which was named Department of the Year for the continued efforts and enforcement to protect the community from drunk and drugged driving. So we just congratulate Police Officer Phillips, Sergeant Bagdagliaca, and Chief Kiernan, and all the members of the town, Southampton Town Police Department for that recognition. All right. Other than that, it's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of meetings and things like that. So I did attend with several of you last week. We didn't have the work session because there was a express session. Southampton Press had a luncheon in Hampton Bays, and they asked Rick and I to be on the panel. And that was really a very interesting forum where one of the larger property owners in Hampton Bays downtown presented some of his thinking for downtown, and had a lot of discussions. And there were renderings shown and things like that of what this particular individual had in mind or has in mind. And I have to say, based on the audience support, it was pretty receptive to, just like our survey showed, most people seem to want us to do revitalization in downtown Hampton Bays. The response to the conceptual drawings was overwhelmingly favorable, and a lot of people coming up to me afterwards saying, what steps is the town making to put zoning in place that will allow for development in line with the vision, the community's vision for the area. So I will be asking Janice to come and do a work session to sort of update us on how to best approach this. Since we did not appeal on the lawsuit, the only zoning that's in place downtown is the old zoning, that 1970s zoning that sort of promotes more of a strip mall development. We have historical concepts who are analyzing current zoning and what you can do under current zoning and what the likely outcome would be, and then we can contrast that to any recommendations for changes in zone. That's really all I have to report at the moment. Anybody else have any announcements they want to make?
Just quickly, just wanted to thank Lynn Arthur and Deputy Supervisor Sapone, and we've been doing the outreach for the CCA, so we'll be coming back to the board sometime in June. I think this will be a month of outreach to different communities. It's been very, very successful. It's been an unqualified success. People are excited about the ideas. We still have a month to go, and then we'll come back to the board at probably the first part of June.
We had our EMS advisory meeting, and that's where our ambulance service, our different corps meet with Southampton Hospital, representatives from Southampton Hospital, Conopy Medical, Southampton Town, and we discuss various topics, one of them being membership. So I just want to urge people to please consider joining our local ambulance corps. They are volunteer, and our local fire departments as well. They are all volunteer. And so we absolutely need your help. Also, and everyone knows this, also school budget votes are this month on May 16th, third Tuesday of May.
So real quick, a couple things. We did have the Great East End cleanup. We had over 700 volunteers with tons and tons of garbage that were picked up from our beaches, our main streets, and our parks. It was a great turnout. I just want to give a shout out to a couple groups. The American Legion in downtown Hampton Bays did a great job on the railroad tracks by the railroad station. The Hampton Bays Beautification And our very own Youth Bureau did a wonderful job down by the canal. They always pitch in every year. It was a great thing to see. They had quite a few volunteers. Also, this Saturday, May 6th, Tommy John and I have been giving away free seedlings for the last couple of years. So it's May 6th, this Saturday, 10 to 12, at Good Ground Park in Hampton Bays and in Nathaniel Rogers' house in Bridgehampton. And don't forget, you can also get free mulch and any kind of compost you want this weekend
At the transfer station.
at the transfer station, not town hall. That's a different kind of compost.
Cindy, anything you want to say?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Maybe two other just quick things that I was at that are worthy of sharing. So since the last time we did updates, we did have another kid make Eagle Scout. It was really nice. I was over in Sag Harbor for that at the firehouse. Robert Stewart. I think was
Robert
his-
Stewart.
Really nice kid. And his Eagle Scout project was build benches at the food pantry in Sag Harbor, so people
Nice.
who are waiting to get supplies don't have to stand up while they wait, which was really nice. I also had the pleasure of attending the East End Special Players performance. They do this once a year. They haven't done it for a few years because of the pandemic. If you haven't been, I highly recommend that you go see. It's really incredible work that they do. They're working with adults, primarily with Down syndrome, other severe cognitive conditions, and they put on a theatrical performance. And Jackie Leader, I believe, is the woman who directs it, and it's funny. It's entertaining. It was at Bay Street Theater. It was sold out, and you leave there going, feeling really just thankful for all the people who take the time to work with these individuals, but also you really are touched by the individual performances and the beautiful souls who they love that moment on the stage entertaining us, and it's worth going. If you haven't been to one of their performances, I highly recommend that you try to make it in the future because they're great. It's a great organization, East End Special Players. Okay, anything else to share? Okay, we do have executive session items. So we have land acquisitions, we have contracts, and we have litigation. So I will make a motion to end our regular work session, but go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.